my today's topic is something related to authentication, authorization, single sign-on, OAuth, OIDC. If any one of you have recently attended the Banyan Ops project showcase, you might have heard all these words. So let us simplify those a little bit today. Let us start with uh, earlier when I used to be in college, I had multiple accounts: Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, Twitter, this, that. And for each one of them, I had a username, a password, and I used to store them in my notes app. I used to update them, keep it safe from my friends as well. So all of us has done this sometime or the other. So this was one of the username and password uh, login type that we used. So this was pretty hard and pretty insecure as well, and pretty headache for the user. So this was our life before SSO, and then came in single sign-on. So my topic for today is login without the drama, a guide to OAuth and OIDC. So let us get started. Okay, we have this. Okay, so starting with what is single sign-on. So SSO allows you to log in once and access multiple applications without entering your credentials again. A big sentence, but to make it simple, I bet everyone over here has once in a life done sign in with Google on your LinkedIn page, sign in with Google on your Josh intranet page. That is how you sign in. Most of the people, I sign in Josh intranet as well. So that sign in Google that you do, that is single sign on. That's it, as simple as that. So single sign-on is like a master key that you have. So you have multiple doors and you have only one master key. No need of different keys for every single door. That is, single sign-on is as simple as that. One master key for all your doors. So one username, password, one credential for all your accounts. This is, everyone has used sign in with Google, so they know what single sign-on is. But let us understand some of the background architecture concepts of single sign-on, starting with IDP and SP. So IDP is identity provider. So what is identity provider? In basic terms, identity provider is your Google, and service provider is your LinkedIn. If you're clicking sign on with Google on your LinkedIn page, then LinkedIn is your service provider and Google is your identity provider. So identity provider is the service that verifies your identity, and service provider is the service that is requesting for authentication or authorization to the IDP. Now, how does it make life easy? Just like I said earlier, this is what we all used to do. I used to do at least some time back, and now I don't. So this is no more needed, and this is how single sign-on makes our life easy. Now, this was a background of single sign-on, which I think most of you might have caught up. Let us deep dive into the main part of today, that is, what is OAuth. Now, again, apps access resources for users without revealing passwords. Again, a big sentence. So think of it as your hotel key cards. When you go into a hotel and the receptionist gives you a key card. Now, the key card opens your room door if you have gym access and pool access as well in your package included, then it will also open the gym and pool doors. But if you do not have access to the VIP lounge, your key card will not work on the VIP lounge door. So OAuth is like the hotel key cards. When LinkedIn wants to access user data through Google, Google will only provide access to whatever resources LinkedIn is authorized to use, and not the entire user data. So it's like the IDP provides the service provider with an access token. That access token is a hotel key card, which gives the service provider the authority to access resources which it is only allowed to access and nothing else. So this gives flexibility as well as security and makes it easier for the user and the service provider as well. Now, we know now, as we have gone through what is OAuth 2.0, let us see how OAuth actually works. So a big flow chart, let's go through it step by step. So in this case, let us consider GitHub as our service provider, uh, Google as our identity provider. The first thing that when you go on GitHub and you click on login with Google, that is when you initiate a single sign-on request. So that is your first step. You initiate a single sign-on request, and when you do that, GitHub makes a sign-on request to Google IDP, which includes client ID, scopes, client secret, redirect URL, etc. Now, what are all these terms? So to start with, client ID is the, you can say, a unique ID for IDP to identify that this GitHub organization is making a request for single sign-on. So how does it identify? It identifies through the client ID. So it's like a username or a unique ID, you can say. Then scope. Scope includes what permissions is GitHub asking Google to give them. So if GitHub is asking, I want the user's email, if GitHub is asking, I want user's profile, if GitHub is asking, I want to access this particular, I want this particular permission, those things, those details are included in the scope. Then we have redirect URL. Now, I clicked on sign in with Google, Google authenticated me, but where does Google redirect me? How does Google know that send her to the GitHub homepage? So that is how this is communicated. The redirect URL is where the IDP will redirect the user once the authentication process is complete. Now, once GitHub initiates this, then user is redirected. Now, if you're not logged into Google, you might have noticed it first asks you to log into Google. If you're already logged in, then that process is skipped. But then it asks you to log in into your identity provider, that is your Google account. So this is the key. You don't have to log in using your GitHub credentials. You have to log in using your Google credentials. And once the login is complete, it will also ask for a consent that GitHub wants to access this particular resources, user resources. Are you allowing it to? Once the consent is approved, then comes the main part, the authorization code flow. So this is a 3-step process that is followed to complete the handshake process. The first one is, once the consent is approved, the Google provides GitHub with an authorization code. Now this authorization code is further used by GitHub to get the access key, which was our hotel key card, if you remember. To get that access key, Google provides GitHub with an authorization code, and then GitHub again makes a request using that authorization code, the client ID, client secret, redirect URL that we saw earlier. It again makes a request and is provided with the access token and refresh token. Once the Google IDP verifies the authorization code and all other details, it provides GitHub with the key card, which is your access token, and also a refresh token. Access token is mostly restricted to an expiry time, which is 1 minute, like 1 hour, 2 hours based on the configuration for security purposes. And refresh token is used once the token expires. This refresh token can be used to refresh the access token again. If you want to know about refresh token more, we can take it sometime else, but this is the overall information. Then once it has the access token, now whatever GitHub wants to access, it can make a request for those resources using that access key, using that access token. It's like it can enter the gym, enter the pool, whatever it wants to do, it can do using that access token, and IDP will respond back. So this was the entire flow of how OAuth works. This is a basic flow. There are more complicated things like grant types, different types of flows are more included, but let us not go there. We'll talk about that sometime later. This was the basic flow, how OAuth works in terms of service provider and IDP and the user. Now, we already have OAuth, but there's one more concept on top of OAuth, which is called as OpenID Connect or OIDC. Now, what is OpenID Connect and why do we have it when we already have OAuth? So now you have your hotel key card, but the door only verifies your key card. it verifies your key card chip, etc. It does not know who is holding the key card or who the user is. How do you verify the user? Or for example, the service provider also needs user details. It wants to authenticate the user on its end as well. It does not want to just rely on the IDP. How does it do that? So we have OpenID Connect. So OpenID Connect is a framework that is built on top of OAuth that provides an additional ID token. With access token, it also provides an ID token that has user information, so that if the service provider wants, it can verify the user on its end, or if it wants to display profile, use user's email for some purpose. So that can be done using the ID token. So let us see what is the main difference between OAuth and OpenID. Yeah. So as earlier we saw, it has the same flow. It is just an extension of OAuth. Just like I mentioned, scope is the list of permissions that service provider wants. Now service provider also wants an ID token. So it will send an OpenID scope while requesting, so that the IDP knows that it also wants an ID token. And along with the access token and refresh token, the IDP will also send an ID token which will have all the user details that are necessary for the service provider, or the service provider has requested. So this is the only difference you can say between OAuth and OIDC, but it makes a huge change when you want to authenticate the user, or you need user details. Let us quickly go through all the applications that it has. So social logins and single sign-on, as we discussed until now, GitHub, LinkedIn, what more we use, GitLab, or for example, Josh Intranet, Hono HR, the Hono platform, or Param AI. There are so many things where logins where we use login with Google, which is single sign-on. Other than that, enterprise applications and workforce SSO. So this Josh Intranet or Hono or Param AI is the example of workforce SSO, wherein an organization uses multiple services, and when a new user is onboarded, for example, it has to configure this user on all of the services, or the user has to remember password for all of the services, which is tiring. So generally organizations use SSO for such purposes, so that it is easy for employees onboarding, offboarding, as well as everyday login, logout tasks. Other than that, sometimes it can also be an overkill though. It's easier login, easier access, everything, and so every time we are using single sign-on, that does not always make sense. Maybe sometimes you have a simple application which does not need a lot of security or third-party authorization, third-party authentication, etc. And you are integrating all of this, then it can also be an overkill. Or for example, an organization has only one portal, for example, only GitHub, they use only GitHub, they have no other portals, but only for GitHub they are configuring an IDP for the employees, which is a bit of an overkill when they are only using one service. So there are times that it can be overkill, so be thoughtful when you use it. Make a note if it is necessary or it is not, and it can be useful, but it also can be an overkill. So that was about single sign-on, OAuth and OIDC from my side. This was a basic demo and explanation. I'm open for questions. Thank you.